Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I am in Atlanta, and I've noticed the last couple of days that in Atlanta, we already have trees in bloom. So we have, I asked someone this morning what types of trees these are, and it's flowering cherries with beautiful pink blossoms. And it's a visual cue. It's a visual cue for me that reminds me that spring is on its way. It is, we could smell it. We can smell spring in the air. And the celebration of Tu B'Shvat is both a mental cue and an emotional, spiritual cue for us to stay connected with the land of Israel. And I call my grandmother every few days. And of course, we check in about the weather. The weather is already much warmer in Israel than it is here, but there are trees in bloom. So I want to introduce a practice today that has been instrumental in my own meditation practice and my own ability to stay with my practice. And I'd love to use Tu B'Shvat as the context for this practice and the celebration of trees, the celebration of plants. You could see in my background, I am one of those cliches during COVID. I began to collect plants in my own home and care for them. And I will share with you that this care for plants in my home has been a transformational experience, one that has a real lasting impact. As part of my exploration of plant life and the way in which it enriches my own life in my own home, I took a class with Daniel Heimowitz. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a plant geneticist and biology professor at Ben-Gurion University, and wrote a book, the title of which really grabbed me. The title is What a Plant Knows. And it's really an exploration of the way plants have a sensory experience, the way plants communicate with us and communicate with each other, and the internal life of plants that is so mysterious and completely invisible to the naked eye. And it really requires a slowing down to really notice what plants are trying to communicate. And one of the ways that I'm really deeply inspired by plants is their resilience. So in his book, Daniel Heimowitz says, while most animals can choose their own environment and seek shelter in a storm and search for food and a mate or migrate with the changing seasons, plants must be able to withstand and adapt constantly to the changing weather, to encroaching neighbors, to invading pests, without being able to move to a better environment. Because of this, plants have evolved complex sensory and regulatory systems that allow them to modulate their growth in response to the ever-changing conditions. I took an online class with Daniel Heimowitz, and in which he talked a lot about some of the fascinating things about the life of plants. Like, for example, most plants are heliotropic, which means that there's a bending toward light, a movement toward light, which I think is really beautiful. There were other things that he shared, but one of the things that he did in his class, which actually was useful to me in my meditation practice, to which ultimately this is what it's all about, is imagine if while sitting in the chair, there was a hole in the ground beneath you, and concrete was poured. You put your feet in the hole, and concrete was poured into that hole so that your feet are completely encompassed in concrete and you cannot move. And in that environment, you have to survive. You can't go anywhere. This is it. All of your needs have to be met from this one position. And he was trying to make a visual representation of what it's like to be a plant and how plants evolved and how each plant, depending on their environment, developed certain protective features. And I really, in a way, felt like there's something to be said about that. First of all, about self-forgiveness, right? The way in which we ourselves develop certain qualities in response to our environments. But specifically when it comes to our meditation practice, I find that so often when I sit down to practice, there are urges and ways in which the storyline, the internal storyline, wants to take me away from my position, wants to take me away from my posture, wants to take me away from just staying put for whatever period I have chosen, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it may be. All of a sudden I have to use the restroom, and all of a sudden I'm hungry, and all of a sudden I forgot to make a phone call, and I have a to-do list. And there's such a wide variety of excuses and storylines that happen within my own internal process. And if I can just imagine planting myself, rooting myself into my practice, and remembering that everything I need in this moment for self-regulation is right here. And that resilience comes from within when I actually stay put. And in a way, I am also heliotropic. I also bend toward the light, and maybe that light is the physical light that we receive from the sun. But I'd like to think of it as a mystical experience of bending toward the light of divine presence, which nourishes me and feeds me and allows me to stay resilient. So I invite you to be playful with this kind of using the sacred imagination of being plant-like in staying put right where we are. I invite you to place your feet on the earth beneath you. And you notice, thank goodness. I know when I talk to my family in Israel, there's all kinds of trembling still happening from the earthquake. We might notice right now in this moment, the earth beneath our feet is solid, unmoving, steady. I invite you to bring some awareness to the trunk of your body. Notice if it is possible to be simply erect. I like to imagine that the breath we breathe in actually softens the front of the body, softens the belly, softens the heart. What happens when we simply stay put? When instead of following the storylines of our internal narrative, we just stay right here. The winds of change are constant. And yet we stay. I invite you to bring a few deep breaths in the body. Notice if it is possible to let go of tension you might still be holding on the exhale. Notice what it is like to be in the body right now, what sensations you feel. Where there might be tension or tightening. And offering this invitation to soften, to relax, to stay put right here. Receiving the light, allowing for the face to soften, muscles around the orbits of the eyes, unhinging the jaw, noticing if it is possible to soften the mouth, relax the face. If the sensation of breath is hard to connect with, you might place a hand on your chest and simply feel into the physical sensation of the rise and fall of the body as you breathe. Remaining still. And noticing if there are urges to move, to fidget. Just noticing. No need to resist or wish it away, but simply soften into presence to the body as it is. Noticing the sensations of the body as they are. And just staying. With kindness. With loving attention. Each time you notice a distracting thought, or an urge or a craving, gently, perhaps internally, inviting yourself to stay right here. nourished by the breath and the light. We build resilience within our ever-changing environment by taking pauses for stillness and silence. In this moment, there is nothing to accomplish. In this moment, just being right here is enough. I invite you to stay And in the last moment of our meditation together, I'd like to read a blessing for Tu B'Shvat, which was written by Rabbi Adina Allen. May we feel our roots knotted, meandering, interwoven, linking ourselves in community, creating a foundation for ourselves and others to grow. May we feel our trunk grounded and strong, supported by a vital core through which energy and intelligence flows through in all parts of who we are. May our mycelial networks of subterranean communication be ever expanding, allowing us to collaborate with those around us toward resource sharing, and mutual thriving. And may our branches reach outwards, the thick sturdiness of old growth giving way to tender shoots, delicate blossoms, and nourishing fruits just emerging. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for that really extraordinary teaching, Marita, and practice. Very, very grateful to you. And we seal that practice as we do each day, friends, by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the Kaddish, to do so. And for those who are not reciting Kaddish, just stay with their practice, stay present, stay rooted, stay planted. And extend your love, support for those who are. You're welcome. Those who are reciting Kaddish, you're welcome to put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box, either now or after we recite Kaddish. And thanks to Kat for sharing the words on the screen. If you're reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yikadash Shemei Rabbah, Yamad Yivrach Yidute V'Yamlich Yidute, V'Chayechon Yomechon, V'Chaye Yichon B'It Yisrael, Hagalah, V'Kariv, V'Imru, Amen.
Shmei Rabba Mevorach Barak V'Yishtabach V'Yishma V'Yaseh V'Tadar V'Yadaleg V'Chol Shmei V'Yashav V'Yachud Ela Mingol Shvacha Yav V'Nechem Mataha Amran V'Yama V'Imru Ishlam Rabba Mishu V'Yimle Kol Yisrael V'Imru Shalom V'Chol V'Al Kol Yisrael
Amen. Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. Glad you were able to be here for really, as I said, a really extraordinary session practice with Marita Anderson. Grateful to you, Marita, for leading us today, and grateful to Kat Esposito for holding our tech Mishkan, our sanctuary here, with grace and skill, as you do every day. And of course, grateful to each of you for being here. Just a reminder that tomorrow we'll be led in practice by Rabbi Adam Klickfeld from Los Angeles, and on Friday, Rebecca Schisler of the IJS faculty will lead us as she normally does, to sit into Shabbat together on Friday. We'll look forward to that as well. So if you're leading us now, we hope to see you tomorrow and or Friday or sometime soon. And we hope you stay well and For those who are staying on, you can use the additional time. You're welcome to use the time to stay planted where you are, stay with that practice if you'd like, and just use this time and this community to support you in that practice. And if you'd like to share reflections on your experience with the teaching and practice today in the chat, you're welcome to do that. And if you have a question to put to Marita, please put that in the chat box and preface it by writing question in all caps. I think in the chat, I lost it, but well, first, thanks, Kat, I think Kat put the link to the Daniel, do you know if it's Shamabits or Chamabits? You don't know?
I just sort of
Chamabits. Yeah. Well, there it is. There's the link to the book, What Plant Knows Field Senses. And the blessing, that was a really beautiful blessing by Rabbi Adina Allen, who is the director of the Jewish Studio Project. I don't know if we have a link to that, but maybe we can find that too. Really extraordinary and such a beautiful seal on the practice today. There were just a few things for me that were really striking about that practice. First of all, I really appreciated the acknowledgement of the tug of the distractions and the imagery of like literally being like stuck in the concrete, or really, I guess better, like stuck in the mud, stuck in the ground, right? And say, well, this is where I am and this is the place. And the idea that everything that one needs is present, and you were bringing attention, I think, to all the internal resources that are present. But I was also thinking, because you were talking about the heliotropic nature of plants that of bending towards the sun, it made me realize, like, I was wondering, like, if my eyes are closed and I'm, if I'm here, can I sense where the sun is? Can I follow the movement of the sun? Regardless of whether one is sighted, whether we are equipped in that way, or that basically that the resources we need are also external, and that what we need to do is receive them too. So I just love that. That's a lasting metaphor. I don't know if that was new for other people, but it was a new one for me. I know it's funny because people will sometimes use the tree metaphor, right? A lot of being grounded like a tree and rooted like a tree.
Well, I'll be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
So the stay phrase, I guess, mantra, I've used it for many years. I've heard Pema Chodron talk about, the simplicity of just reminding yourself to stay. He talked about how, like, clearly, like, there's an association with, the way we train puppies, like stay, and that didn't really work for me.
You have a dog?
I have a dog, but my dog, like, never stays. He just doesn't. He sees a squirrel and he's gone. I think he was just like a really poor model for that for me. Using puppy language just in a sense that we wouldn't beat our puppy into submission. We do it with sweetness and treats and kindness, right? Otherwise we can traumatize our dog. And I think that's where she was sort of going with it. But I think that trees are like Jewish mysticism is just filled with, tree images, and the way we like map our understanding of divine being and how we're related to the divine is really, I feel like trees are sort of like our intermediaries. And in a way, to me, using trees or the experience of a tree is so like Jewish. I don't know. It feels like really works for me. So I just, the stay phrase is like, okay, in this moment, I'm just being a tree. I'm just being a plant. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to run away just because I don't like the way something feels, right? I'm not going
Right.
to run just
But I
because.
appreciated like the analogy then also to the all the things that are tugging that are real, right? And to meet them with a lot of compassion, say, oh, I'm just going to stay put. It's interesting because like if I have that imagery of, that concrete imagery, like, well, it's not really an option. I can't go anywhere. It's a little different than thinking, well, I can't, having that free choice to go somewhere or not, to follow the distraction, and I'm going to go do the to-do list right now, right? But it was helpful for me to think about diminish that sense of agency and actually feel like, no, I can't. I have to stay here. I have to stay here right now. That was helpful for me. There's a really great question from Laura. I'm curious about also. Would you describe the relationships you develop with the plants you nurture and how the relationships have changed you? And maybe you can introduce us to
my plants.
Yeah, they're behind you.
Plants require a slow way of being. My plants come with me, when I've overwatered them or underwatered them, or when it's time to bloom. I mean, like the joy and awe that I feel when one of my plants flowers is like unbelievable, because it feels like I've invested all this slow time. And I don't live a slow life. I have 3 kids. There's so much demand on my time and attention. And I've decided that this was my sort of, the silver linings that we found during the pandemic when we slowed down a little bit. That I am tugging on that, and this is the remnant of it, and it allows me for slow time and slow care, and observation that plants require in order to communicate properly with plants and really allow for plant life to thrive within your home. It requires observation and tenderness.
That is quite inspiring. I have a very small corner of plants, and you're inspiring me to go out after this afternoon and get some new ones to take care of. Just scrolling through, a lot of appreciation for this practice today, Marita. Don't see any real questions. I was going to ask you. Someone was expressing, as I think probably most of us feel, a lot of appreciation for the people you work with. That how blessed they are to get an opportunity to work with you as a chaplain. Do you bring this, like, is this a teaching, or do you bring plant stuff into your chaplaincy, would you say?
I will tell you that certainly within the hospital. So the hospital is sort of a universe of its own.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the hospital where I actually stopped working there in August, but it's a major hospital in Atlanta, large footprint. And I will tell you that whoever made this decision, I actually wrote to like the person responsible for resources at the hospital a huge thank you note, because they brought a lot of plants inside. And the experience of like bringing a patient to the atrium where there's light and plant life, or meeting with a family member in the atrium where there's plant life and light, it just, something happens. And hospitals are such universes that are closed off from the world outside, that interaction with a little bit of nature it really changes the dynamic. It changes the energy of the place. So I think it's like that with any living thing, right? Whether it's a bird or a dog or any living being that you can be in relationship with, of care, right? So I know that chronically ill patients who care for something actually find tremendous meaning and joy from that experience, because so much agency is taken away from us when we're not well, right? So like just like being able to water a little plant and help it grow makes us feel like we have agency.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, thanks to Nancy Snyder, who shares this really very beautiful thing. This touched me because I have intimate and respectful relationship with plants. I have some house plants that have lived with me for over 40 years. Each has a story. I have cuttings from plants that belong to my sister who died over 30 years ago. I have one that's starting to bloom again, which it's been doing since some elderly women gave it to me so many years ago, and now I'm probably their age. I've been in the presence of the wild trees around the land where I live for decades. There's something, there's like a whole nother dimension to that idea of cuttings that are, that represent this intergenerational quality to it, but that, that also is the generative nature of plants. And it actually made me think that of the few plants that I have here, I have 2 African violets that belonged, that my mother tended, that I have given up for dead many times from my own neglect, and yet have an amazing capacity for regeneration and coming back and, being full of flowers. So I really, appreciate becoming more aware of that and the fact how meaningful they are to me and how restorative that is. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
This was great, Marita. Thank you so much. People are asking for the link to Adina Allen's blessing. Do you know where you found that? Because I don't see it online.
You were right, on the Jewish Studio Project. And I've had it on my desk for a couple of days. I just printed it. I don't know.
It was on, all right, the Judaism, then maybe we'll just direct people to the Jewish Studio Project. You found it on their website? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's.
Blessing for Tu B'Shvat. I like to always end with poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I could not find anything better than this. I thought this was just.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful piece. And hold on, did Daniel, did the book also get in there?
Yes.
It did. Okay.
At the very top.
Okay. Yeah. So people who are not familiar, the Jewish Studio Project is a wonderful organization devoted to creativity as a Jewish spiritual practice. Founded by Rabbi Adina Allen, is really incredibly talented. So thanks for bringing that to our attention too, Marita. Always great to be with you. So appreciative.
Okay, thank you so much. Be well, everyone.
Be well, everyone. We hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks to Kat and to each of you for being here, as always.